There is a particular kind of comfort in complaining about a problem instead of solving it. We have all felt it, the quiet relief of naming what is wrong, deciding it is someone else's job to fix, and walking on. This is a story about that exact moment and the price it quietly asks of us. The old teachers tell us that the obstacle is the way, that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity, and that a stumbling block to the pessimist is a stepping stone to the optimist. Today's story takes us to a kingdom that had everything: rich harvests, safe roads, and people who wanted for nothing. But its wise king had noticed something troubling. When life grows too easy, people often grow comfortable, and in their comfort they slowly forget how to act. They wait for someone else to move what stands in front of them. So this king chose to teach his people a lesson they would never forget. Not with a speech, not with a law, but with a simple action. What happened next reveals one of the most important truths any of us can carry. Opportunities don't happen. You create them. And a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. As you listen, I want you to hold one gentle question in your mind. When life places something heavy in your path, are you someone who walks around it or someone who pushes? Stay with the story until the very end, because the answer this simple parable offers may quietly change the way you meet every obstacle from this day forward. Long ago, in a land where the fields were always green and the markets always full, there ruled a king known far and wide for his wisdom. His kingdom had known peace for many years. The harvests were rich, the roads were safe, and the people wanted for nothing. But the king was troubled. From the high windows of his palace, he watched his people go about their days, and what he saw worried him. Life had become too easy. His subjects had grown comfortable, and in their comfort, they had grown idle. When something went wrong, no one stopped to set it right. They waited for someone else to act. They complained, they pointed fingers, and they walked on. The king feared that a people who had forgotten how to help themselves would one day forget how to stand at all. He could have called them together and given a grand speech. He could have passed a new law. But he knew that words slipped from the mind like water through open fingers. A lesson truly learned is one a person discovers for himself. So the king decided to teach without speaking a single word. Before the first light touched the sky, while the whole kingdom still slept, the king dressed in plain clothes and slipped out of the palace, alone. With great effort, he rolled a large, heavy boulder into the very middle of the busiest road in the land, the road that everyone used, from the richest lord to the poorest farmer. Then he hid himself behind a cluster of trees nearby, sat down, and waited to see what his people would do. The sun rose, and the road came to life. The first to arrive were the wealthy merchants, dressed in fine cloth, their carts loaded with goods. When they saw the boulder blocking the way, they frowned. "How careless," one muttered. "Who would leave such a thing in the middle of the road?" They shook their heads, complained about the trouble it caused them, and then simply steered their carts around it and carried on toward the market. Not one of them thought to move it. Next came a company of soldiers marching in step, their armor shining in the morning sun. They too stopped before the stone. "Look at the state of these roads," grumbled their captain. "Is there no one whose duty it is to keep them clear?" The soldiers grumbled along with him. Strong men, everyone, with arms more than able to shift the stone aside. But they only stepped around it, boots crunching in the dirt, and marched away without breaking their line. As the day wore on, the scholars and officials passed by, learned men in long robes, men whom the people respected for their knowledge. They studied the boulder and began to speak. "This is a disgrace," said one. "It shows how poorly the kingdom is run." "Indeed," said another, "the king should see to his roads before they fall to ruin." They spoke cleverly and at length, finding fault with everyone and everything. But for all their fine words, not one of them laid a hand on the stone. When they had finished talking, they gathered their robes and went on their way. And so it went, hour after hour. Rich and poor, young and old, everyone who came upon the boulder saw it, and everyone judged it. Some were angry, some were amused, and some simply sighed. But they all had one thing in common. Each believed it was someone else's task to move the stone. And so the boulder did not move at all. It sat exactly where the king had placed it, while the sun crossed the sky and began to sink toward the hills. At last, as the light turned soft and golden and the day grew tired, a poor peasant came walking down the road. His clothes were worn, and his back was bent under a heavy basket of vegetables he was carrying to sell at the market. He was weary from a long day of labor, and he had little to his name. But when he reached the boulder, he did not do what all the others had done. He did not complain. He did not look around for someone to blame. He simply looked at the stone, and then he looked at the road beyond it, and he understood that if the way was to be cleared, it would have to be cleared by him. So he set down his heavy basket at the side of the road. He spread his feet, placed both hands against the cold surface of the boulder, and began to push. The stone did not move. He pushed harder, and his feet slipped in the dirt. He caught himself and tried again, leaning his whole weight into it. His arms began to ache. His legs trembled. Sweat ran down his face. Still the boulder held its place, as stubborn as a mountain. Many times he felt like giving up. His strength was nearly gone, and a small voice inside him whispered that the task was too great, that he was only one tired man, that no one would blame him if he walked around it like all the rest. But the peasant set his jaw. He drew a deep breath, gathered every last bit of strength he had, and pushed one final time with all his heart. Slowly, so slowly, the great stone began to roll. An inch, then a foot. Then, with a low groan, it rolled aside and came to rest at the edge of the road. The way was clear. The peasant stood there breathing hard, wiping his brow, quietly proud of the small thing he had done. And then something caught his eye. There, in the hollow of earth where the boulder had rested through the whole long day, lay a small, leather purse. He bent down and picked it up, and when he opened it, his tired eyes went wide. Inside was a handful of gold coins, more money than he had seen in all his life. And tucked beside the coins was a folded note. With trembling hands he opened it and read the words written there in a fine and careful hand. The obstacle in your path is an opportunity in disguise. Those who take action will always find their reward. It was then that the peasant understood, and so did the whole kingdom. When the story spread, as such stories always do. The boulder had never been a simple accident in the road. It had been placed there on purpose, by the wise king himself, as a test, and the reward had been hidden beneath it from the very start, waiting for whoever was willing to do what needed to be done. The wealthy merchants had seen the same stone. The strong soldiers had seen it. The clever scholars had seen it. They had all stood exactly where the peasant stood. But they had chosen to complain and walk away. And so they had walked right past the gold without ever knowing it was there. The peasant alone had reached for it, not because he was richer or stronger or wiser than the others, but because he was willing to act. And this is the truth the kingdom carried in its heart from that day onward. An obstacle holds you back only as long as you stand before it and protest. The moment you set your hands upon it and begin to push, it stops being the thing that blocks your way and becomes the very thing that lifts you higher. Do not be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. For every burden laid across your road is also a door, and it opens only for the one who is brave enough to push. Look closely at what separated the peasant from everyone else, because the difference is smaller than you might think. He was not richer than the merchants. He was not stronger than the soldiers. He was not more learned than the scholars. The only thing he had that they did not was a willingness to act. The merchants gave their complaints. The soldiers gave their grumbling. The scholars gave their clever opinions. But the peasant gave his hands. And this is the quiet truth the whole kingdom learned that day. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. How often do we live like those merchants and scholars? We talk about the changes we want to make. We study our problems from every angle. We explain with great intelligence exactly why things are the way they are. But talking about a thing is not the same as doing it. Well done is better than well said. Nothing will work unless you do. You can hold the finest plan in the world, but action is the foundational key to all success. And without it, even the greatest dream stays a stone in the road that no one ever moves. Notice too that the peasant did not wait for the perfect conditions. He was tired, his back ached, the hour was late. By every excuse available to him, he could have walked around the stone like all the rest. But he understood something the others did not. You do not wait to strike till the iron is hot. You make it hot by striking. Opportunity rarely arrives polished and convenient. More often, it arrives disguised as something heavy and inconvenient, sitting right in the middle of your path. And if the obstacle in front of you feels far too large to move, remember how the peasant began, not by lifting the whole stone at once, but by leaning in, slipping, catching himself, and trying again. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. A journey of 1,000 miles begins from under the feet, with one step taken now from exactly where you stand. It will not be easy, and it is not meant to be. There are no gains without pains, and the struggle itself is what shapes you, just as rough water is what teaches a sailor his craft. So think about your own life for a moment. What is the stone sitting in the middle of your road right now? Maybe it is a conversation you keep avoiding, a goal you keep postponing, a habit you keep meaning to change, or a problem everyone complains about but no one will fix. You have stood before it. You have named it. Perhaps you have even hoped that someone else would come along and move it for you. But here is the gift this story offers. The very thing you have been walking around may be the doorway to everything you have been waiting for. The reward is not found in avoiding the obstacle. It is hidden underneath it, and it belongs to whoever is willing to push. Register these lines in your life. If you really do, no obstacles could ever stop you reaching your goal. Nothing will work unless you do. Opportunity belongs to those who step forward and do the work, not to those who wait for someone else to act or who feel the task is beneath them. The obstacle is the way. Being part of the solution rather than part of the problem is a choice available to everyone equally. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. What looks like an inconvenience or a burden in your path is often a disguised chance for reward, visible only to the one willing to confront it rather than avoid it. Now, I would love to hear from you. What is the one stone sitting in your path today? The thing you have been walking around? And what is the first small push you will give it this week? Share it in the comments below, because your honesty might be exactly the encouragement another person needs to finally move their own. If this story stirred something in you, please like and share it so it can reach someone out there who is standing before their obstacle right now, quietly waiting for a reason to begin. And if you would like to keep these old stories and their gentle wisdom coming, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so we can keep walking this path together. There is never a wrong moment to do the right thing. The time is always right to do right. And the right time to begin is now. I'll be back again with another story soon. Until then, be patient, stay grateful, and remember, the obstacle in your path was never there to stop you. It was there to lift you higher.